Hello there, welcome back. In this video lecture, we'll see how to push down a query onto the MySQL database from Spark Job. If you have not gone through or if you have not seen my previous videos where I have shown how to create a data frame using MySQL table or how to connect to your JDBC databases using Spark Job, I'll just leave a link over here in top right corner of the video and you can go and check it out. Let me just quickly create a Spark Job and query push down. In this query push down, rather than we using a data frame API functions like select, group by, and other stuff, we'll build a query and we'll run the query directly on SQL engine from Spark Job. Once the query is run in the SQL engine, we'll get that result, and that result will be fetched into the Spark Job, and we'll use that result instead of reading entire table and running the individual functions or using data frame API. So for that, let me just quickly copy paste the boilerplate code. As usual, I will import these things, Spark session and properties. Now, so what we were discussing, we instead of SQL data frame functions or data frame API functions, I would like to write a query. Let's take the same example what we have done over in our previous video, where we'll be counting number of customers per state, right? So instead of this, I'll put the this similar thing into the query. Let's do let's do that. So select customer state and count a star as uh, state-wise count, and from customers, what I have to do a group by on customer state, right? So let me just cross check the query again. Select customer state and I'm taking the count of each customer count of each state from customers. And here I'm just mentioning the customers as a table, right? So when we are writing the query, right, we have to make sure we pass in proper table name. That means if we just run this customers, right, if we just give the customers over here, it will check in the default database rather than a specific database. If your table is there in the default database, you can just directly give the table name, but our table is not there in the database, right? But rather it is there in a retailed DB. So it will throw an error when we use this query. So for that, what we'll do, we will just give retail underscore DB dot, because when we are passing down or pushing down the query, we have to make sure that we are passing our database and the table name along with the in the query, right? So now we have the query ready. So to run this query, what we can do, I'll do query, I'll just give us query result. I'll use Spark read and JDBC connection. I'll use the same function which I have used earlier, which takes URL, table name, and properties as parameters. But instead of passing this table name which we have over here, what I'll pass the query to this function. To pass this query, we cannot directly pass the query to this function. Rather, we have to do some alterations to the function, like I'll use a string modifier, which is a string representation of Scala, yes, and within double quotes, what I'll do, I'll give parenthesis, and in parenthesis I'll give dollar query. That means within this parameter, within this parenthesis, this query would be placed, and we'll call this query as some table. I'll just call it as temp table. You can call this anything. Even you can call this as cust table as well. It's just a temporary name which we give to the query, right? So instead of passing the query, instead of passing the table, we are passing the query, but we are not passing the query as it is. We have to do some alterations like this, like we have to group that within a parenthesis and call some table name and then pass it over. And let me just quickly run this query result dot show. I'll show top 50 lines of my result. And let me quickly run this. Now the query execution is complete, and now you can see all the tables with all the states with accounts in that, right? Uh, See, whatever the state AL has three customers and state AR has 12 customers and state C has 20 12 customers, something like this, right? So this is how you push down a query onto a SQL database engine rather than using data frame API. So the only difference here you'd see here see is instead of passing the table name over here, we'll be passing the query and we'll get the results from the query. Okay, that's it for this video lecture, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye, guys.